Hey everyone, welcome to the C-Suite Mama, or should I say, hey sweeties? That's our new word for the folks in our community. Welcome to episode 4. So excited to have you all back. We've been having a really good time having conversations with some amazing women. I trust that you all have been super inspired through this time. Before I introduce you to our fabulous guest today, we'll just recap from episode 3. Episode 3, we talked about some strategies for mothers who want to be in leadership, who want to grow in their roles. And so we mentioned a couple things. We spoke about building your support network, which is extremely important. And we spoke about strategies on increasing your visibility in your community, in your workplace. So I really encourage you, if you did not listen, go back and check out episode 3. Lots of great gems. That one was a solo episode. I had a lot of fun doing it, and I can't believe I was able to fill up 35 minutes talking by myself, but lots of great gems. So please go and check that out. So today, well, hold on. I forgot. We're going to talk about our hot topics a little bit. But here with me, I have Miss Shai Arnold, which we'll get to learn about all the wonderful things that she's doing. So last week, we started a new thing where we kind of talking about mothers and women in leadership positions and some of the hot items in the news. And so this week, and I've been seeing this article across a few platforms, but today I'm looking at it on CNBC.com. This one is talking about the motherhood penalty. And it says women experience a motherhood penalty, but for dads, there's a wage bonus, which I think is so interesting. And it's talking about kind of the income setbacks and kind of the growth opportunity setbacks when women become mothers. But according to this research, there's a bump up or a wage bonus after men become dads, which I had no idea. I mean, we knew that there was always a wage discrepancy, right? But we didn't realize that there's been this motherhood penalty. That is wild to me. What you think about that, Shai?
My personal opinion is that, like, systemically, men and fathers have been known to be the provider. So I can see at the table a salary negotiation happening. I can see people saying, well, I have another kid. And when it comes to women, we are the nurturers. We a lot of times make a lot of sacrifices in our personal growth and development in our careers because it's like we got to think about the kids and what they need. And when you have a new baby, you have this internal guilt of stepping away, going out on leave, and then coming back, and you're in this rat race because you're trying to pick up where you left off, not realizing you're a whole new woman.
The mom
Whole new
guilt
body,
is so real. Yes.
all of the things, right? And so I believe it to be true. Like, I believe that probably happens. One thing I have seen in my professional experience, and at the time when I had a baby, I wasn't in a leadership role yet. I was very early in my career. But I have coached and worked with other women who, when they come back from leave, they feel like I got to do more. Because now it's performance based and it's I got to prove that I can keep up with whatever. And a lot of times they have a bunch of breakdowns. And so we already lose ourselves in parenting anyway, especially if it's your first. Now it's you're, going through this I don't know, like mental war.
Yeah.
And there's no support. A lot of times there's not a place to be vulnerable to say, hey, I want to be and continue to be a thriving employee.
Right.
But I don't want it to be at your expectations.
Well, that's what I love about the C-Suite Mama community, right? Where ladies can come and have these conversations and learn tools for negotiation, right? Because we're often, or we have been socialized to be the good girls. And so sometimes that looks like not demanding your worth, not negotiating. And so the C-Suite Mama community helps us to develop tools and strategies for being able to have those conversations. But before we get too far into this, because I know we could talk about this stuff all day, I want to make sure folks know who you are. So like I said, today we have Shai Arnold, who is an amazing professional. So we'll talk about your career, but you are also a multi-business owner. So we will talk about all of those things, a nonprofit founder, and you parent a super genius baby with his own business, right? So let's talk about all those things. I don't want to run down the list because I know I'm going to forget something. So I'm going to give it over to you. Tell the folks who you are, what you do, all those things.
So I like to introduce myself as just like your everyday typical homegirl who is not everybody's cup of tea. We more prefer champagne over
I
here,
love
and
that.
that's just what that is. But I have a 9-to-5 corporate career, which I didn't like go to school like, oh, I want this corporate career. I mean, I like to listen to Jeezy, so I did want to do the corporate thugging thing,
Okay.
but it was honestly, I've been so blessed in my career, but my baby was sick. Right out of grad school. Actually, I was pregnant with him during college, had him right, and I was going to grad school. I was in the nonprofit world for a bit, and he kept having seizures, and I was like, man, like nonprofit drains you. You're not really off at 5, like all of the things.
Never.
I was in the community a lot, and it was too many things happening in the community that was happening in my personal life.
You know, I had no idea until today that you had a nonprofit background too. I didn't know that part.
Yeah, so always in programming, designing programs for the state, all of that. And so it just felt too close at home, like I couldn't separate it, right?
Yeah.
Because the same people that I'm advocating for, I am a recipient of. So I'm on social services. I'm still trying to get my master's. I'm still trying to navigate and do all of the things to get off of that income cliff and all of the things they talk about. And so
can I pause you real quick? For those who don't know what the income cliff is, can you kind of inform folks, especially because I think there are organizational leaders too who have the ability to make decisions about salaries
and
who don't understand.
Yeah. So I can share it from the perspective of a person, a recipient, I guess. The mindset, right? So you go to school, you do all of the things they tell you to do on paper that help you get livable wages. There's a difference between livable wages and being underpaid or under whatever, right? So livable wages says that like you make something on paper that's like sustainable, you can live. But then they don't consider if you got credit card debt, if you want to make investments, if you want to save towards home ownership, if you want student loans, like all of those things. They just say you can pay your rent, you can get health insurance on this wage, right? And so for me, as someone who had just happened to have my baby while I was going to grad school, I was already doing the things to quote unquote check the box, right? The livable wage or the income gap is like, as a single head of household with one child, if I make over $32,000, I get cut off of everything. Now my bills become more.
Yeah.
Pay didn't go up, but I have more responsibilities. Or do I stay at this bare minimum job that's paying me whatever, and I still can get the Medicaid, or I still can get the Child Health Plus, and I can have a little bit of cushion because I might want to take a vacation.
Yeah.
Whatever, like going through that mindset. And I remember the day, clear as day, that I said, if I can afford to eat out, I don't need food stamps. And I was 22 making that decision. Like, if I can afford to eat out because I'm in grad school, I'm running, the baby he don't eat. He a baby. Right. Like, I don't need food stamps. Like, I'll leave that to people who actually need it because I'm in the community. I see what the need is.
Yeah.
Also, people are rude downtown, social services, so that makes you feel humiliated, And the only thing I held on to was my daycare subsidy. I was like, I cannot afford daycare. It was like $300 a week at the time. I'm like, I cannot afford daycare, and I need daycare. Otherwise, I cannot go to work.
This is like, it's such an important conversation to raise and an issue to highlight, because here you were in grad school, you were a professional, an educated person, and it wasn't meeting the mold of the stereotype, right? But still having a hard time making ends meet and still needing to.
And that's why, like, I feel like it's necessary to be vulnerable on this journey, especially thinking once you get to the leadership, right? Because for me, and I'll tell my leadership story, but like someone can look at me like, oh, she's young. And I get that all the time. Like, oh, she's young and whatever. And it's like, no, y'all really don't know. It's from the trenches.
Yeah. So tell us the story. I know I took you off track a little bit. Yeah. So you're in grad school, you're pregnant with BJ.
Yeah. So my friend was like, and this is why it's also important to have friends who are in spaces that maybe it's just for a season, right? So I had a friend, Dawn, she was just like, come work at the bank. I'm off at 5. I'm off on the holidays. I'm off on the weekends, and we get overtime. I was like, I'm not smart enough to go into banking because you have imposter syndrome. Like I have a criminal justice degree, I had a law enforcement background, then nonprofit, getting a master's in public administration.
And talking about you weren't smart enough, but okay.
Because in my head, I thought bankers were smart, and they're really not. Now I can tell you a decade later, they are not. But in my head, you know, you have this illusion of investments, and they know this, and they know that. They don't. But some of them, but they don't. And I was like, okay. She was like, you have a criminal justice degree. I investigate fraud for cards. Come. Wow. I'm like, okay. And it was the most boring job in my life. What I didn't realize is I was learning operations, which I'm really good at now. But in that time, it felt like I had no creativity. I was in the community, and now I'm in this box, literally. And so my manager at the time, she was new, and I didn't dress the way I was supposed to dress. And back then, 9 years ago, like, M&T was very, like, the box, very corporate. Like, very corporate. Yeah. God forbid you did anything. I remember when they said we could wear jeans, and it had, like, everybody was excited, like, and I was not that girl. It was like, here I am. And so I think also, sidebar, a lot of that came down to, I lost my mom when I was super young. So a lot of the social skills of how do you job search? What does your resume look like? Going to get your first suit, black or brown, or what shoes and all of that, I missed. Yeah. Those are life skills that I feel like I missed. I knew to be highly educated. I knew to be thriving in all of these regards, but there was some social skills in the professional environment that I missed.
Yeah, what else? So you were working for the state, nonprofit.
Yep.
Moved into banking, boring job, but learning some skill sets.
Yep.
Kind of understanding what you missed out on because of the loss of your mom, which is a good segue to one of your other things that you now do.
For grieving daughters. So it all meshes together. I always said, like, so I lost my mom when I was 10, and my sister raised me, and I always was like, I'm want to do stuff for young girls who lost their mom. But I didn't feel like I was qualified to talk to them about nothing. So besides life experience, right? So one day I said, for my birthday, it always falls the day before Mother's Day, I was like, I'm going to do something. And it's going to be like the Motherless Daughters Brunch. And that was 2019. A bunch of people came. Some I knew, some I didn't. And it was like, we need to have a community. But I also was not community driven to, like, be super vulnerable, to be leaning in, to be like, you know how it is to build a community. Like, I was not there. And I left that place clear as day. God said, go to therapy.
Wow.
And so he told me the promises that would come after. And so that started, like, my healing journey that I did very publicly, very out loud. And I cringe when I look at my memories on Facebook. But after that, during COVID, we officially birthed For Grieving Daughters, which is a nonprofit. We provide social emotional support and mentorship to girls 10 to 21 who's experienced the loss of their mom or maternal figure.
So beautiful.
So I realized there was, like, supports that girls needed.
Yeah.
That you don't get in traditional counseling, or you don't get in traditional mentor group settings. Someone said to me the other day, like, a woman, she was like, girl, I didn't even know, like, what to do with my menstrual cycle. Right? And those are not things that you feel comfortable asking in the mentorship groups that you might be in, or if, whatever your community is.
And it's something that we just take for granted, right?
Yeah. Because you just, like, go to your mom when you get your period. Like, oh, mom, whatever. Or if you got a sister or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's one. And then what I forgot to share is that during the journey of me, because I hated my job so much, I had became friends with Christina, who owns High Class Hair. And I didn't know that girl. I just went and sat in her chair. Everybody think, like, we knew it was the story. We didn't. I just sat in her chair. And I saw how messed up her business was. Like, it looked good on social media. It looked good, the client experience, but the back end. And I just was talking to her, and she's like, girl, I don't know this.
So tell for those who don't know, the back end, what do you mean?
Like operations, administrations, what does your systems look like? She was just like, girl, I don't know.
Okay.
So our sons are like 3 months apart.
Okay.
So she's a new mom, and I'm just like, okay, well, for my grad project, like, can I help your business? And she's just like, sure, like, whatever, girl. And she wrote it out with me, like, really had become, like, my sister is my sister, but yeah, that's where my love for small businesses started.
Wow.
So in the midst of me working my 9 to 5 at
Mhm.
MNC, probably getting paid like $2 more than minimum wage, I would work as her assistant for high class here. And then I eventually, after grad school, opened up my first business doing administrative support for a lot of small businesses.
Okay. So tell us about that.
Uh,
That was not your current
no.
business.
So
Okay.
what happened was I always felt like I was in a rush competing between my career and business.
Okay.
And I would measure myself to people who were seasoned entrepreneurs, but I still have a growing career, right? And so every time I got something happen in my business, I got that new client, I got that whatever, I got a promotion. So I would have to pull back on a business.
Okay.
And so I left that boring role. I was there for 9 months. And God is all over my career. That's one thing I can say.
Yes.
I was there for 9 months and immediately got put into another role, which you got to be in your position a year.
Oh, wow.
So I went to Buffalo Promise neighborhood, which is a subsidy of M&T, our nonprofit. I was overseeing programmings for the schools and for parents. We had 2-generation model, which said, we will provide free childcare. However, we want you to work with these program leaders who will help with parenting. So I helped with parenting, access to resources. So again, back to what I was doing before. Then we have financial coaches, housing coaches, and then someone who helped from the education side. So if you wanted to pursue your GED or master's or whatever. So what it said, the motto is supposed to say, if we take care of the parents and the children, we have a better household with quality of living, right? So I did that for 3 years. Had the best experience because I was finally able to let go of like childcare, and my son was able to go there. I was able to buy my house.
Wow.
Not realizing I work at a bank, use the resources. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I still wasn't, just because you work at a bank doesn't mean you understand how to manage money.
Right. And, a lot of times, especially when we are talking about underrepresented or marginalized communities, we don't even know the right questions to ask. So it might be right in front of you, but you don't know what to do with that information.
So I never salary negotiation. I've already just shared 2 promotions. I never salary negotiation. I took whatever they gave me. I never asked for an officer title. I never asked if equity was available. I work for a corporation. So there's so many things when it comes to packaging that looks different than what your base is.
Yeah.
I didn't think about how do I contribute 100% to my 401k. These, again, I'm in survival mode. I'm freshly in a career. I'm a single mom. I'm in survival mode. But I'm trying to get out. So I got another promotion into our management development program. And why that was huge is because they didn't take people who look like me. They didn't take people from the schools I went to. They took more prestigious schools. And they only took 10% of internal talent.
Wow.
And they definitely didn't take nobody who was a mom.
Wow.
So getting into that program, which was a year-long program, a bunch of college students, so what did they know? And I got some best friends out of there, but what did they know? I was seasoned. I had been there for a minute. And this was specifically how to be a manager, how to be a leader. And it gave you full scope of the bank. And so I then began to apply those things to my business. Like, I'm going to run my business like a Fortune 500. Here's what I need. I need a risk division. I need operations. I need all HR. I need all of these things. Charitable. I leaned in to say, how do I run an organization with philanthropy values? So I began to understand it as my playground and make all the mistakes.
That's really beautiful that you were able to leverage your career and you didn't just treat it as, this is my job and this is what I'm doing 9 to 5, but really using it as a learning opportunity to grow in other ways, which is also very much a part of my own leadership journey. And I think is very important. Tell me a little bit. I know you have spoken about the challenges of being a single mom, the benefits cliff. Any other challenges that you've kind of faced in your career journey, your entrepreneurship journey?
Yeah, a birth building with BJ.
Okay. Tell us about building with BJ.
So BJ is a special kid, and I think I underestimate how special he is because he's mine. I see him every day, but he's a special kid. He's had 3 seizures. One of them that he should have died, and he didn't. He was unconscious and not breathing for 15 minutes and didn't. And I just think of him different, and whatever he does in the world when he gets older, I know we'll look back and be like, all right, that's why you put me through that.
Yeah.
But just my whole story of having him and what he's overcome made me think of, there was during COVID, so I'm just settled into my house, right? It's COVID. For grieving daughters, it's kind of just growing, but people are losing their moms left and right. I don't know how to support, like, I don't have the story of I was my mom's caregiver. So that's a different element of imposter syndrome I went through, because how do I meet these needs? And I'm like, I don't know, right? And I'm just painting a story. My career, I go from MDP, graduate, I move into wealth. Wealth was the best decision that ever happened to my career.
Okay.
Because I'm literally managing multi-million-dollar trust funds, understanding what the wealthiest of the wealthiest do with their money. And most of them, it was through businesses, right? So legacy clients, I could tell you, and I know what their kids' annuities look like and all of this stuff, right? So it changed my mind from a business perspective, but the culture was horrible. I mean, microaggressions, like macro, like it was like bad, because it's a money game.
Yeah.
So I said to the bank, because who did I think I was? Y'all have a diversity problem. Now, we have a diversity office, and then there's me. Y'all got a diversity problem. But one thing about me is I've always been a complainer with a solution.
That's very important. That's a leadership nugget to
a complainer with a solution, right? So if I'm going to come to you with something, I already have a solution. And so fast forward, they say, go create this program, which is a talent development program that I currently still run based in racial equity. We've won tons of awards for it and saved the bank tons of money and promotions. I do personalized careers coaching, executive coaching, all of this stuff, right? But in the midst of trying to build that, where people are losing their jobs, people are getting laid off, we don't know if we're going to live because of COVID.
Right.
I have a baby who, he could have a seizure off of anything, right? He had a seizure actually the week before Erie County shut down for COVID. Looks at me and says, why is work more important than me?
The baby.
Because he's in pre-K, he's now home, and I'm in my head trying to do what I need to do to sustain as a single mom, because this is really one of our main incomes, right? And then I had this business that at the time, everybody needed me because there's PPP loans. There's people who are trying to understand what their administrative stuff looks like. There's people who need to pivot in business. And I was burnt out.
So how did you answer that question?
So I said to him, well, I didn't actually. I just put the phone down as I was emailing somebody and cried.
I bet. I feel like I cried dropping my son off every other day up until like kindergarten or first grade. So I get it. This is a good segue to my other question. So a lot of times still to this day, we hear the idea of work-life balance, which I've come to realize that it doesn't really exist. Work-life balance. And so what I've come to appreciate is the idea of work-life integration, which has not always been possible, or, I personally have not always known how to do that. And I think I'm really kind of just getting to that place of understanding how to integrate the two. Tell us about how you approach work-life integration, or if you manage to succeed with work-life balance.
So I don't believe in balance. I believe in harmony.
Harmony, yes. I love that.
Because if it feels good to me and I feel like I'm in a flow, I know I'm doing something right. So what I recently discovered is I love slow mornings, because everything about my life has been fast. Yeah. So going back to building with BJ really quick, we did affirmations. That was our non-negotiables. So it was like, okay, I can't stop work, but I could be done at a certain time and we can do affirmations. And so after a year of doing that, I knew I wanted to create him a business because it creates wealth. Like, that's just what we know. We can want to have wealth, you create a business. So when he was 7, I created Building with BJ, which is an affirmation-based company. Yeah. And so at the time, whatever, it wasn't affirmations, but it started, we got to our affirmation coloring book, and that's what he does. Yeah. But to this day, that's our way of, like, bonding. Yeah.
It's funny. I told my husband that you were coming on the show. He's like, "Oh, the one with the coloring book."
Yeah,
So
yeah.
BJ getting some shine out here.
Yeah. So for me, harmony is, again, allowing to ask myself, what do I need? I realize that I need different levels of intimacy. Like, I turned 30 and was just like, who the hell am I? Right? Because you like walk into womanhood,
Yeah, it
right?
changes again in 10 years.
And, okay. And I'm not somebody who's makes my career my identity.
Talk
You know
about
what
that.
I mean? Like, I don't like Mean Girls, or I don't like, I mean, I'm not for everyone, and everyone's not for me, but I don't like the, like, oh, I'm this, and I have that title, and I this, and I'm that. And you get lost in that, and we forget that sometimes we're just connectors.
Yeah, it's very easy to get lost in that.
And so for me, what keeps me grounded is constantly figuring out and exploring what Shai needs and what Shai likes.
I love that. Is that a question you ask yourself every day?
When I'm overwhelmed, when I feel that, like, rabbit hole creating, when I feel like I'm frustrated with myself, it's like, what do you need? Because if I can meet my needs, then it limits the expectations of me being upset because someone else couldn't meet my needs. So I often ask myself, what do I need? And my therapist has helped me with some tools to understand, to identify my needs.
Yeah. Are you able to express those needs to other people? I know you talk about like helping folks build teams, right?
Yeah.
And so that's part of our leadership tool bag to be able to tell our teams what we need.
Yeah.
What do you use that skill?
I do.
With your teams?
And it's so frustrating because a lot of my leadership style in building teams and all of that specialty, which is Nora and Associates, so that was birthed after COVID, is vulnerability. And it's hard to be vulnerable as a Black woman and not care if it's used against you as a leader. Right? And I feel like I have a little bit more grace in a corporate space than I do sometimes working with other people who look like me. Like, in a corporate space, if I'm like, I've built up such a good personal brand that I am who I am. I'm authentic. I'm going to come, like, whether I show up with a hoodie or a suit, it don't change the value that I'm going to bring to the table. So if I say I'm not my best today, that's what you need to understand.
Yeah.
If I say I'm leading from this place of vulnerability, I can lead and inspire that way. Sometimes I find navigating new leaders, building new teams, and I'm vulnerable with them because that's how I lead. It's like, well, she was having a bad day, so it's okay if I have a bad day and treat people like whatever. And I'm like, no.
Right.
I told you I was having a bad day, but you don't treat people the way you want to treat people. Like, you don't get to, yeah.
Let me ask you, you mentioned the ability to show up in the corporate space just as yourself, your current job, they just know who you are. I think that's a beautiful place to be in, but not everybody has reached that ability just yet. Talk about, like, how are you able to just show up?
So I grew up in an organization, right? So I could really only talk about my experience with this one organization. I grew up in an organization. I grew up being known as being bold, courageous, and so somewhat they would even say aggressive, right? In some regards. And I lean into that because if the aggression meant that it made you uncomfortable to do the right thing, I'm cool with that. So what I have realized is my superpower is that I always say this to people I coach. I can't not be okay with myself and go to sleep with myself. I talk to me and I'm with me more than anything.
Yeah, I like that.
So I'm going to go to bed mad at myself because I really wasn't myself.
I love that.
For your approval.
I love that.
That's nuts.
Yeah, I love that so much. That's a really good nugget. Y'all write that down. So, and I'm so grateful to have you here today because in the community, we have a lot of single moms in the community. We have some younger and some older professionals. But you have built such a beautiful, well-rounded career. What advice would you give for the single mom who doesn't know the right questions to ask or how to, like, navigate through their big corporation or organization? They want to grow in their career or they want to move up in their career. How do they navigate that?
Start with why. Why do you want those things? Because I chased a lot of things and a lot of accomplishments and hit a lot of things and I wanted more after.
Yeah.
So start with why. Why are you doing it? The other thing I would say is learn to, and this is the space I'm in, so being vulnerable, use your money as a tool.
Use your
money as a tool.
Use your money as a tool.
So I
Tell
don't
us
have
about
a
that.
6-figure career because it's cool to say. First of all, you pay more taxes. I'm in the 24%.
Right.
And that, no one talks to you about that either. I didn't learn from another Black woman, okay, when you hit 6 figures, this is how you move.
Right.
I learned it from a white man. Right?
Yeah.
So, when you get there, get clear on how you want to start creating. If it's your first time getting there and you got to learn, go back to the foundation. So I had to go back to the foundation to understand, how do I take my bonus? And do I pay off debt? Do I invest it in a business? Do I put it in a trust fund for my son? Do I put it in a CD?
The beautiful thing is that you even knew the options, right? Because there are many
Right.
folks, and probably some folks who are listening who don't have that language. So I think those are all helpful nuggets, and we might have to have a part 2 of that conversation and talk about what all those options are. I want to talk about Neura and Associates because we really didn't get into that. I want to talk about Neura and Associates. I want to talk about Bricks Collaborative a little bit. Neura and Associates, you say, our partnership focuses on enhancing the organizational leadership structure and building adaptable workforces, leading to strengthened policies, processes, and performance. For mothers in existing leadership roles, tell us the importance of all of these elements, because some folks have gotten promoted through the ranks, but don't really know the importance of adaptable workforces and building these structures. So tell us a little bit about that.
So Norton Associates is a consultancy business where we really partner with female-owned businesses to make sure that the generational legacy that they create can exist through systems. So if you want to step away from your day-to-day career, even if it's the business you own, it's still a career, right? Yeah. So if you want to step away from the day-to-day options, it could be to go retire. It could be to have a baby. It could be to get married and enjoy it. It could be because you want to go raise venture capital. How do you empower the team you have through your systems, through your whatever it is that you need for them to get the vision that's in your head on paper and do all of the things? Here's why I focus on women. Most of them came from a corporate background and forget to then apply that to their business.
Yeah. How can we, because you said some key things like empowering your leaders and setting folks up to be able to do things when you're not there. These also very much sound like skill sets that moms do anyway, right?
So here's the biggest gripe I have. And I do it a little bit with For Grieving Daughters, not as much. Your business is not your baby. So put that in there. Your career is not your baby. Whatever. We talked about your career not being your identity. Your business is not your baby. Yes, it's something you birthed. It's something that came out of you, whatever. It's not your baby. So when you think of it that way, you make more logical decisions versus emotional.
Then people are walking around saying that, like, your business is your baby.
All
People
the time,
say that all
the time. And they get offended at me. Like, what do you mean? And it's like, well, would you sell your baby? Businesses are to be sold. Right. Would you walk away from your baby? No. Sometimes you got to pivot, right? And so knowing all of this, I understood that there's women who are going into business, not getting the proper funding or capital that we need to sustain a business, not taking their 9-to-5 principles if they have that experience in, but also not really being leaders. And I'm really being hard on myself this season about I fell into leadership. I didn't realize I was a leader. And I'm big on my philosophy. You can lead from anywhere. And that's my career journey.
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Because this group is all about mothers and leadership.
You don't need permission.
I love that.
That was the best advice I got.
I love that.
From the CEO of the bank. And it's of course you said that. You're a Black man and whatever. You finally made it. And that's amazing, right? We have a Black man who runs M&T.
Yeah.
But the best advice he gave me, he says it frequently to a lot of people, but this time he was talking to me. You don't need permission.
You don't need permission to
And
lead.
a lot of times we want permission to innovate. A lot of times we want permission to ask for the promotion. A lot of times we want permission or validation on, is this thing good enough? That it steals the joy of just going with the journey.
And as women, as mothers, and I spoke about this early on, the whole good girl socialization that we've
Mm-hmm.
fallen into. Good girls ask for permission,
Mm-hmm.
and we could just throw that off, right? Like leadership, you just step up and do. Leadership is influence, right? So you don't
Yeah,
need a permission to
you
influence
don't need
people.
permission. And I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the bank. I could only speak on my journey in the bank. And I can say that hearing I don't need permission allowed me to bring my full authentic self.
Yeah,
Right? Taking the nuggets that these people, leaders that I'm around, have dropped to me. Once I begin to internalize it in every area of my life, it got easier to show up authentically,
yeah,
right? So we talk a little bit about the Bricks Collaborative. It's the newer business that I created with my partner who is a restaurateur. Because I understood working in the operations and administration side, I understood there's food entrepreneurs who are super creative. They don't know business.
hmm.
That's why most restaurants fail.
So tell it, what specifically is the Bricks Collaborative? Lay
Yes.
it out for the folks.
So we're just like a bridge, right? So we have a space. So that's one part of the brand extension that you could use. You could do pop-ups, if you want to get out of your house, if you actually have a restaurant and you're like, oh, I need to take the pressure off my kitchen. I could go there. If you want to just do a catering, if you want to host a cooking class or launch your sauce or whatever, we're there as a community asset. Then there's this other part of like, you learn here what you want to do with your business and in it, and fail here before you go and sign that big lease.
Yeah.
And how do we make sure that peer-to-peer mentorship, whether it's formal or informal, you feel comfortable asking the questions and not be intimidated and letting your fear drive you out? Because if you get to some other organizations here in our ecosystem locally, they're going to look at you like you crazy. And a lot of them don't look like us.
Right. Right.
So immediately you become incompetent to them.
You know what? So much of what I love about all of your businesses and your organizations, you have really taken this servant leadership approach, which is so beautiful to me, that like everything that you do is in service of community. You are, while still building your legacy, while still creating wealth for your family, making mistakes and learning as you go, which is all very much, a natural part of a leadership journey. But I'm just so always inspired by the work that you're doing. It's so beautiful.
Thank you. So I think that's my advice, is just like, know your why. And make money your tool.
I love that. I love that. So tell us what's next for you, and then let us know where folks can find you.
So what's next for me is for Grieving Daughters is having our first gala, which is our 5th Motherless Daughters fundraiser. So May 11th, 5 to 9, you can get the tickets on forgrievingdaughters.com. Can I tell you that as much as I have gotten over imposter syndrome when it comes to my career, I experience it in business a lot.
I'm sure.
And I have to learn to give myself grace.
Yeah.
So I am officially stepping in as like an ED, for real.
Yeah.
And I believe in mentorship and accountability partners. And I believe in like your board of directors, which is your village. So I have people who are holding me accountable in different avenues. So actually building a nonprofit. It's cute when I think people say like, oh, I got a nonprofit, I give away scholarships.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
I've done that.
It's a lot of work. It's so good.
Doing it?
Yeah.
Oh, baby.
It's so good. I attended last year to the For Grieving Daughters brunch in support of my best friend whose mom is not with us, just, to be there for her to have a familiar face at the table. It was so beautiful. Not a dry eye in the room. And I will say, even though the event is catered for women who have lost their moms, your panelists were just phenomenal. It was so many nuggets that were dropped. So don't even worry about it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, thank you. I try to be inclusive, meaning like I know grief is not just death, right? Yeah. It could be loss. It could be abandonment. It could be grief of losing your job. So it could be grief of divorce. It could be who you grieve after you plan to have this baby and you get married and you do all the right things that society tells you to do, and then you don't know who you are. Like when you look in the mirror.
A really good conversation. The many different forms of grief and how that shows up in motherhood. I'm actually going to be having a conversation in a later episode of the rise to senior leadership while going through grief with another guest. So I'll have to pick your brain for some questions. So we got the Forgiving Daughters brunch that's coming up. How can folks find you? Give us all your social media platforms. And
so if we want to be formal, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Shai Arnold. If we don't, you just want to see my wild stuff, go to Facebook. I don't post nothing wild, but I just believe in being authentic in every platform, right? And so I don't feel like, again, you're gonna be everybody's tea, but I do feel like people who like champagne and certain ones, you like certain things, right? And so I do think that there's this poise that you even carry where it's like, I am a person of service. I am a person of confidence, but I know how to maintain being private.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in our roles, whether it's mothering, career, that we lose who we are and our personality.
Yeah, it can happen. But you find your way back for sure. Okay, so Shai Arnold, I'll make sure I tagged all of your things in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here. This is such a good conversation. Lots of good nuggets. I hope folks can write that down. Before we wrap up today's episode, I do want to take a moment and pay respect to a local shero for all of us, Miss Constance B. Eve, who passed away yesterday. I had the pleasure of interning with her when I was an undergrad at her organization, Women for Human Rights and Dignity. I did a minor in women's studies, and she was so gracious. I cold called her. I just happened to be driving by, and I saw the organization. I had no idea what they did, but she welcomed me with open arms as an intern to be able to support some of her work. She later went on to be my link sister. And so I just want to give recognition to Miss Constance B. Eve, who is a true legend, a true uncrowned queen. She is the wife of former Assemblyman, Mr. Arthur O. Eve, who both are just incredible individuals in their own right. But I would be remiss if we did not take a minute to recognize her legacy and the impact that she has had on our community, the impact that she has had on me in my personal journey as a C-suite leader, and the work that I get to do with women every day. So we just want to recognize her. We send prayer and love to the whole Eve family. Thank you so much for sharing Miss Eve with our community. And that is a wrap for episode 4. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, follow us on Instagram, and find us on Facebook for the ladies who are interested in joining the group.